I'm Captain Chris Myers, Orlando Fly Casting Lessons and Central Florida Sight Fishing Charters. And today I'm going to talk about how you can get started with your new fly fishing kit. If you got a kit like this one here, or a combo, or someone just bought you a rod and reel separately, and you're wondering what are the first steps you take, we're going to talk about that in today's video. So what I have here is a typical fly fishing combo that you can get on Amazon. This is a sunshine fishing combo. It comes with the case, and it also has some accessories like a box of flies and some other little things you can attach tools to, etc. But we're going to talk mainly about the rod and reel, how you get that set up, and what are the first steps you should take to starting your fly fishing journey. And all these combos come with the reel already connected to the rod, just like this one here. They will all come with the handle on the left. And this is meant for a left-handed retrieve. They can all be switched around. There should be an instruction book in here. It's relatively simple on this particular model, and most of them are similar. Some you have to unscrew a little cap. A lot of them have a little lever here. You pull the lever, it comes apart. This is all there is to it. There's a little bearing inside here you have to take out and flip around, but then you would have to take all this line off the reel and reel it on the other direction. You cannot, under any circumstance, take the reel and just flip it around and put the handle on the right. If you wanted it there, you would have to take all the line off, put it back on. So this is set up, a right-hand or left-handed person can use it. I switch all mine. I'm a right-handed caster, but when I fight fish, I switch and reel with my right as well. It's up to you, but the handle should be on the left. That's where it's going to need to stay unless you flip it around internally and make the drag work backwards. On the opposite side of the handle, there should be a knob that turns, and it is a drag knob, and that controls how hard it is for a fish to pull and you to pull line off this reel. So if I tighten this thing way down, righty tighty, lefty loosey, I can't really pull any off at all. So you want to have this drag set properly before you start using the reel. How do you go about doing that? We will talk about that in a minute after we discuss the rest of the components that you have here. You'll see on this particular reel there is some orange line, and then there is this green line. The green line is the fly line. It is a floating fly line. I don't know if I ever saw a combo that came with anything other than a floating line. It is around 100 feet or so. The orange line underneath that is micron or dacron fly line backing. It's much thinner, kind of like braided fishing line, and that is to prevent you from losing your fly line if a fish were to get more than 100 feet away from you. On the end of the fly line is also a fly fishing leader. Now, some combos will have this leader tied onto your fly line. Others, like this particular one, have a factory-made loop in the end of the leader. There is a factory-made loop in the end of the fly line. Put one loop through the other, fish the end of the leader back through, and that is how you would attach that. Your particular combo may have the leader tied onto the fly line with a nail knot, and if you want to change the leader, you would either have to tie a new nail knot, or you could cut off a section of this leader, leave a little 6-8 inch section, tie a perfection loop. If you're not sure how to do that, you can check out my knot tying playlist. Tie your perfection loop, then any leader that you buy is going to come with a loop in the end of it. You put one loop through the other again, and then you never have to be cutting or messing around with your fly line. We do not, under any circumstance, want to continuously cut and retie the fly line, because the first 30 feet of this is what holds the important weight that's going to help us cast easily and effectively. We do not want to be cutting portions of that weight away from there. So you want to do it once and then leave it and never have to mess with it again. The fly fishing leaders can either be made in a machine like this one is, or you can make them yourself. But all fly fishing leaders should taper down from a heavier section, which is called the butt section. That's the section that attaches to your fly line, and it tapers on down to a section that was much lighter and finer. The fine section is what defines the strength of this leader. So this particular leader may be 10-pound. This last couple inches would be the 10-pound section. It gets heavier as it goes up. If you were building your own leaders, you would have to tie various sections of line together of differing strengths till it tapers down to the tensile strength you need for the particular type of fishing you are doing. You'll see on the end of this leader I have tied a piece of yarn. I strongly recommend that when you start off with this kit, the first few times you use it, and just about every time you practice, you do so without a hook on there. That way, if you make a mistake, you're not injuring yourself and getting hooks stuck in the back of your head or your ear or elsewhere. Put a small piece of yarn, a little piece of rubber band. We need something on the end of this leader to make it work much, much better. A little piece of yarn works absolutely fine. So we have our leader attached to the fly line, and this is how we're going to determine, for the most part, how strong we need that drag to be. If I only have a 5-pound leader, I don't want to be having 5 pounds of drag on here. That means my leader is going to be reaching breaking strength before the drag starts going out. So I want to have this drag, the amount of tension it takes to pull line off this spool, much, much lighter than my leader. Most of the time I'm only fishing with drags that are 20 or 30% of the strength of the leader. To figure out exactly what that is, really the only way you can do it exactly is to tie this around a luggage scale or some other handheld scale. When it's through the rod, have someone pull on that, and when you see the drag start going out, give you a reading. If you need more or less, you can tighten it or loosen it, and that is how you can set the drag. And after a while, you'll be able to pull with your, after you set it, then you can pull with your hand and see how much tension it takes, and you know that amount of tension is 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 5 pounds, etc. A word of caution about the drag that many of us have learned the hard way: before you go to start pulling line off your reel, be sure there is at least some minimal drag pressure on here. If you do not, if this is all the way loose and you go to pull on this, see how that reel kept on spinning? If you pulled hard, that first pull, even if it's only a foot, you're gonna have a horrible tangled up backlash on your spool. So be sure every time you go to use this that you have that drag tightened up so it at least takes some kind of pressure to pull that off. You will see as I pull line off of here, the handle rotates around. If I were to hold this handle, I'm unable to pull any line off that spool. Unlike conventional fishing tackle where you can hold the handle, the drag still allows line to come off. With fly fishing tackle, if you're holding the handle, no line can come off the spool. So you have to be sure when you want a fish to take off that you let go of this handle. When you're letting go of this handle, it's also a very good idea to get your hands and fingers far away from that, because it goes around very, very fast. And if you leave your hand here, it'll come around and smack you in the knuckle as a reminder to move it out of the way the next time. As you're reeling line back up on here, there is a bar across all fly reels on the back and the front here. And if you don't take your finger and move it side to side and wind it on there evenly, it will all pile up on one side, and pretty soon you won't be able to turn the handle anymore. And you may think something's tangled or broken, but it's simply because you've run out of room in here and the line is pushing so hard against that bar. So as I am reeling in a fish, I am using my fingers to move that line side to side. Otherwise, you will reach a point where you cannot turn it any longer. When I'm putting my rod together, you could start from here and build it up. But if I did that, pretty soon I have to stick my rod and my reel down in the dirt or mud, whatever's down there. If you start from the other end and build it from the top down, then you do not have to do that. Some rods, like this one here, and many others, but some do not, have nice little white or colored dots that show you how to line up the two pieces so these guides line up. If yours do not have it, you could line them up and use a little dot of fingernail polish to mark that, so in the future, if you take yours apart a lot and put it back together, line it up quick and easy, and you're sure that those guides are lined up exactly where they should be. Here this is lined up properly. You will find different kinds of cork grip shapes, and you'll find reels with a butt on them, some rods with a butt on them, some do not. Most of the time, most rods 6 weight and under do not have this fighting butt under here. There are some saltwater versions that they do put. I have a 5 weight with a butt on it. That's a saltwater model designed for people that need to stick that into their stomach as they're reeling in bigger fish. Your rod may or may not have this butt depending on what size it is. All the rods, and this one says it right here, will tell you how long they are and, very importantly, what size they are. So this one is a 9 foot. Well, this one says it on the other side. Some of them say it all together. So it says 9 foot. Then it says it is a 7-8. Some rods say 7-8, 5-6, 3-4. Most rods will just have one size on them, a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. That is very important because it tells you in the future when you're going to buy a line, what size line you need to put on that rod. So if it's a number 7 rod, I put a number 7 line. If it's a number 5 rod, I buy and I put a number 5 line on there. In general, there is no reason to differentiate and put a heavier line or certainly a lighter line on. Some people do. I have found that if you stick with the line that the rod says goes with it, that one usually works just fine. So this one is a 9 foot 7 weight. Yours may be the same or different than that, but it's very important that you know what size. So if someone asks you what size rod you have, you would tell them I have a 5 weight, a 7 weight, etc. That's what they're referring to, and not generally how long your rod is. They mean what weight is your rod. And that is simply a classification system that's used so that you know which line goes with which rod, and it helps you in general know what size rod you need to purchase for the type of fishing you're doing. So if I was fishing for tarpon, I would not want a 3 weight, which is a very small rod. I would want something that's a 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 12, depending on the size of the fish. Little tarpon, I could use a 5 weight. Giant tarpon, I use a 12 weight. So it helps me know what rod to pick depending on the type of fishing that I'm doing. And now that we have our rod together, we understand how the reel operates. It's time to put the line through the guides, and you will find it is much easier than trying to take this very fine leader and stick that through there. To take a section of this line, doesn't matter really where you do it, you can do it relatively near the connection point of the leader, bend it over in half, then use that to stick through the guides, and this will go through much faster and simpler as you are putting the line into your rod. And if you should drop it as you're doing it, you will find it much easier to grab this and save it than that piece of leader. Once you have the line through your rod, you want to pull at least some of the fly line itself outside the tip of the rod. And an important thing to know about fly fishing is there is no type of fly fishing at all where we would make a cast, stop moving the rod, line rolls off the reel through the guides and out the tip of the rod like it does in conventional fishing. In fly fishing, we will always, 100% of the time, by hand, pull off the maximum amount of line you think you're going to need to use, and you can either drop that on the ground, in the water. If there are obstructions on the ground, you may need to have a basket around your waist where that line can go. But if you think you need to cast 30 feet, pull 35 feet of line off that reel or more. Always have a little bit extra in case you need to reach farther, and you could have gotten farther You didn't want to come tight and too short of where the fish were because you didn't pull enough off. There's no reason to pull it all off. If you're not going to use it, it's just going to be in the way. But know that you will first pull off as much line as you are going to use and put that somewhere other than on the reel. If you are trying this at home, do not, under any circumstance, go out and practice this in the roadway or on some concrete like a basketball court, anything other than grass or water. If you put this on the concrete or roadway, very quickly, it will scrape the coating off your fly line and ruin it. When you want to replace a fly line, a decent line costs $50. A lot of lines cost $80 to $120, so you do not want to be scraping them on the concrete and ruining them. So that's a very important point to remember as you take this out and try it for the first time. I start most of my lessons with people on the grass, and then we move to the water. So you can certainly go out in your backyard or at the park if you don't even live near the water and do tons and tons of practice without being where the fish are. Now that we're ready to begin casting, the first thing we need to do is get a proper grip. And for me, that grip is just as I'm shaking somebody's hand, that rod fits right in there. My hand goes around there very loose. My thumb is up near the tip of the cork. In this particular cork, it's fatter in the center. You can see the little hand wells. That's where your thumb goes, right in there. If yours may be shaped differently, but you want to have your hand somewhere near the top and not way down here near the bottom. You'll find it much more effective and easier to cast that way. There are a variety of ways to grip a fly rod, and the good thing is the fish, the fly line, the fly rod itself, they don't care how you hold it. You could hold it 2 fingers, one on top, one on the bottom. If you can make it cast that way, go ahead and do it. There are certainly suggestions that I offer that work for me, and I've seen work for others. You will see a lot of people, especially in smaller trout streams, fishing with their finger on top. I much prefer my thumb on top. You will see world-class angler casters that cast with their thumb off to the side. Try, experiment with different grips, see which one feels the best to you and which gets you the best result, and that is the one that you should use. And nothing in fly casting, as far as styles, where you point the rod, how you hold the rod, make any bit of difference to the fish, and you should find the one that is most comfortable for you and the one that you can do most consistently, and that is what you should stick with. So if you've made it to this point in the video, I appreciate you sticking through it, and please consider becoming a subscriber, because on my channel I have tons and tons of fly casting videos, so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time in today's video going over all the different casting techniques. You can find those on my website. Become a subscriber, click that notification button, and you can get all my future videos as well as access to my library and find out some specific casting tips that you may find helpful. And now that we're ready to cast, this is where having that piece of yarn becomes very helpful so that you do not hit yourself with it. And if you're practicing on grass, it's going to keep it from hooking the grass and ground every time you cast. What we are trying to do in fly casting is use the weight of this line to get whatever we have tied on out to the target. We're not counting on the weight of the hook and the fly to be able to be heavy enough to get as far as we need to go. I could cast this piece of yarn 100 feet or more. We could never do that at all with any other kind of fishing rod, because we are using the weight of the line to get out there, not the weight of the rod. So we're always thinking about moving fly line, and I'm always in my casting pulling fly line. And casting really is this simple. I am pulling the line in the direction I want it to go, and I stop the rod. If I'm pulling the line fast enough, the line keeps on going when I stop. And that is what's going to form the cast that we're looking for. And a conventional fly cast, where you see people casting back and forth in the air, that is called false casting, and we use it for a variety of reasons. But what we are doing is that rod stops So I'm pulling this line this way, the rod stops, the line keeps on going above the tip of the rod, and it forms a loop, and it unrolls out away from us, and it straightens out. At that point, we can let it into the water, or we can keep it in the air, change directions, and go back the other direction and let it go from where it came. We use false casting for a variety of reasons, from dialing our accuracy to moving the line from one spot to another to adding more line as it's going back and forth in the air. But for most purposes, there really isn't a need to make more than 2 or 3 of those back and forths in the air, because we are never catching a fish with a hook up here in the air. We want to get it into the water as quick as possible. The very first cast that I think all anglers should start off using is a cast called a roll cast. And I have several videos that go into great detail on how you make this cast. But first, we would pull off, get yourself at least 15, 20 feet of that fly line, put it in a pile in front of you, and keep that over on your casting side. If facing the camera, I'm right-handed, if I'm casting on my right-hand side and I put the fly line and hook over here, you can see as I do things, it is going to either come up and hit me, it's going to come up and hit my rod. Nothing good is going to come out of that if I'm casting on the right and the hook and the fly line are on the left. So when you first pull this off and you have it outside the tip, put it down on your casting side. I'm going to face this way so that you can see better. And I have that laid down on the ground or the water as such. When we're from the very beginning of your fly casting journey, if you always concentrate on moving the tip of this rod as it goes back and forth, no matter which way I'm going, moving it in the tip in a straight line, your casting journey and your fly fishing experience will be so much more enjoyable, because you'll be able to reach incredible distances and get pinpoint accuracy because you're able to create that loop. Wherever this tip moves, this fly line must follow along behind it. My tip moves in a straight line, my line can go in a straight line, and when I stop, it keeps going in that same straight line, exactly the direction it was going when I stopped the tip. If I pull this tip around in a curve, like a windshield wiper or tracing a half a circle, the line and the fly line are going to go in a bigger half circle, much higher up in the air, and they go way up high and they don't go out very far, and it falls in a pile and it becomes frustrating. When we're casting, we need to be moving this rod tip back and forth in a straight line and not around in a curve. For very short casts, just like throwing an object, it only takes a little short stroke. For longer medium casts, it takes a medium stroke. For super long cast, it takes a super long stroke. If we treat fly casting as the same as we do throwing a ball, it will all make it easy to relate to something you've probably already done. If I'm just throwing from me to the camera, I could do this. If you're fishing in a little tiny trout stream, it's not much wider than this thing behind me, you really don't hardly need to move at all. A little itty bitty stroke makes it go out as far as you may ever need. If I wanted to cast 40 or 50 feet, as we do in saltwater, or if you're fishing in a lake or a pond and you want to cover a lot more water, then I might need to reach out here. Now my stroke is much longer. If I only ever worry about my thumb going in that straight line, the rod tip should, unless I start over bending it by using way too much speed and power, if my thumb goes in a little short line for a little short stroke. But I cannot hold everything still and make bigger and bigger strokes with my wrist, because then I'm turning into more and more of a curve and not a straight line. The number one mistake made by fly casting anglers. I've been teaching people to do this for over 15 years, and whether they're beginners or people that come to me that have been doing it a long time and are still struggling, it is because their tip of the rod is going around in some type of curve and not a straight line almost every single time. But for starters, we can begin with this roll cast, which doesn't require you to keep line in the air back and forth and figure out when do I change directions and all that. The very first cast you can make, put that down in the ground or water, come back slowly behind you, and your rod should be pointing up. The line will form the D. So we make the letter D with the rod and the line, and we get our hand back here, not up here in front of us. I get it back here. And now treat this as if I took an apple and stuck it on the end of your rod, and your rod was stiff enough and sharp enough that I could do that, and you wanted to take that apple and fling it out there. If you wanted to do that with a stick and apple, you would have to save that speed and save the direction that save your change of direction. So I'd go bop, 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 then I'd fling it off. If I had my apple on a stick and I just started here and I immediately went up, over, and around, the apple flew off here somewhere. It didn't go out there, and you'll see that your fly line does the same exact thing. It goes way up over your head, and it doesn't ever come close to getting straight because we told it to do exactly that. I'm going to pull, 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 rotate over. I'm using that wrist to change the direction. That is the very basic roll cast. It will get you out far enough in a lot of streams and smaller rivers to get your fly in the water. You could do that in a matter of a couple of minutes. If you want to get where you are making much longer casts and keeping it back and forth in the air, something like this, where I'm unrolling line back and forth and able to hit much, much longer distances, that takes a considerable greater amount of work and attention to detail. So that's where checking out all my other casting videos will help set you on the path to fly casting success. Hopefully that answered your questions on how to get started with fly fishing and fly casting. If you're interested in this particular combo, if you're looking for a combo, I have the link where you can find it below. It's worked good for me. And if you're looking for a video and exactly how you can start making these back and forth casts in the air, check out my beginner fly fishing video right here.